I was very lucky. I was in the West End, and I started to look after. I was working for a chauffeur agency, and I drove for this company, and I drove an actress called Betsy Drake, and Betsy Drake was married to Cary Grant. And whilst I was driving Betsy Drake here, she said, you know, Cary would like you very much because you speak so much like him, which I did, which I've managed to get away from now because it's too much. People always say, oh, you sound like Cary Grant, so I keep away from it. But well, I met Cary in the end, to cut a long story short. She was doing a picture in at Boreham Wood called Next to No Time with Kenneth Moore. And I went down, worked with her, I drove her and looked after her and one thing and another. It was her Man Friday. Cary came over and we took a liking to each other, and I went back to America with him. And I used to drive around with him everywhere and one thing and another, all over the world. And whilst I was there, before that I was in the Army. And I was in the Army Physical Training Corps. I went in the Army as Royal Artillery, but then transferred to the Army Physical Training Corps, where I represented the Army in 1952 on the parallel and horizontal bar. So I was very good on gymnastics. And when I cut a long story short, I went to America. I was with Cary, and they used to make a show over there then. It was a short in between other films. It was called Joe Doakes Behind the Eight Ball, and they were 4 minutes, 5 minute shorts in between movies. And they used to do these things, and Joe Doakes always got into trouble. Whatever he did, it went wrong. You know, he invented a gas lighter that wouldn't go out. It kept blowing up, and then he put it in a bucket of water boiled over, etc., etc. And they had one going there where he became a gymnast. And he got on the horizontal bar and did kip overs over and over and over and couldn't stop. So he let go and went into the audience. Well, in America at that time, they had plenty of stuntmen who could sit in the audience and let someone land on them. I mean, they'd let a row of bricks land on it, wouldn't care, but they didn't have a stuntman who could go over and over on the bar. So Paul Stader, who was Cary's stunt double at that time, said to the producer of it, he said, I know this English guy on the beach. He's down there every day. He's doing this sort of thing. He hangs around with Cary. So Paul came to me and said, would you like to do a stunt in a movie? So I said, yes, I'd like to do a stunt in a movie, because to get in the industry over there, number one, to get a Screen Actors Guild card was very difficult. And the Stuntmen's Association had just been formed. So I said, I'd do it. So I did the stunt. I swung round, let go into the audience. And it worked perfectly well. Then they had another thing a few weeks later, to jump a tennis net. After he's won the tennis match, he jumps the net and falls flat on his face. So that was my introduction into the stunt industry over there. And then I got in with the stunt boys. I became a member of the association. Now, bless them, I'm an honorary member of the association. Clint Eastwood and I were inaugurated together. But I went on to Spartacus and Peter Gunn and all those series and big movies. On Spartacus, I did the falls on the fence, the rolling of the burning bales, and that was my initiation into the stunt industry over there. I mean, if you remember the crucifixion scene, or that road full of crosses. Well, to do those crosses, we were all stuntmen on there. There was a peg through the cross. We had stuck with glue onto our foot the head of a nail, and there was a head of a nail in each hand, stuck. So we used to have to climb up with a ladder, balance on that the 4-inch peg each side with our legs crossed as if they were nailed and our hands up. It was the most uncomfortable stunt ever. And I think there was about, I don't know, 40 or 50 of us on each side of the road. So when the first one got up there, the time they got to the 30th, 40th one, the first one was dying to get down. He's aching, going mad. And when Peter Ustinov and Gene Simmons did the arrival with the horse and cart, Ustinov goes up to Caesar for the greeting. Now, Ustinov knows how long we've been up there, the stuntmen. He was very compassionate over it, because it was purgatory. And no one wanted to do anything wrong and make it work. And Ustinov got right up and he dried. So he looked up at him, and Kubrick couldn't hear because Kubrick was way back, and he said, as I was the second cross in, he said, curse you, Curtius, may they boil sprouts in your navel, with a straight face. Because the stuntmen would have killed him. If we'd had to go up there again, they'd have killed him. And he got away with it. And Kubrick, when he went to Daly's, heard this. He said, what the hell are you saying? He said, well, I thought you could put it on my back. He said, you know, voiceover. He says, the stuntmen would have killed me. But that's what he said. He actually said, curse you, Curtius, may they boil sprouts in your navel. but with a gusto, you know, curse you, curse yes. Mayday boils sprouts in your navel. And after that, North by Northwest, I worked North by Northwest. I did Carrie's driving on that in the park. And at the end, you see the end of the show, you see me at the end of the show, not as a stuntman, as standing next to the stretcher. You remember in the movie, Eve Marie Saint pretends to kill him, and he's carried out in the stretcher. Well, when we were out there, we went out there as stuntmen. The stuntmen are Screen Actors Guild, that is their union, and there is a Screen Extras Guild. Well, Carrie was standing out there, and extras were holding the back of the stretcher, and the guy who was holding the back of the stretcher dropped it twice with Carrie in it. So he dropped it. So he said, I'm not going to do this anymore. He said, I refuse to do this. So he said to me, Raymond, he said, you come here and hold the back of this. So I went to hold the back of it. The union people come up and said, he can't do that because he's a stunt actor. He can't do that. It's an extras job. He said, well, I tell you what, he said, I'm not going to do that unless he holds it. So in the end, I'm standing next to the guy at the end with a hand out like this holding the stretcher while the extra pretends to hold it because he dropped it twice. It's a lot of fun. I doubled Martin Landau in North by Northwest. I did the fall off the mountain face of Lincoln's nose. Well, it was going to be a Lincoln's nose, but we changed it because it wasn't working. It went over a little bit to the left of that. But I doubled Martin in that, yeah. We were doing North by Northwest, and we were shooting in the Plaza Hotel. That was when I found out I wanted to be behind the camera. And Carrie was doing the scene coming out of the elevator, and I was standing next to Hitch, who was in his chair. And he said to me, Raymond, because he called me Raymond, he never called me Ray. He said, oh, what do you want to do? He said, you're going to keep driving around with Carrie and throwing yourself around? I said, no. I said, I'd like my name on my chair like you. And he said, well, keep on. He said, it'll probably happen. And that was the thing that really got me. And many, many years later, I was directing at Universal, and I was directing a show called BJ and the Bear, I think it was. And I used to walk past Hitchcock's office every day. And one day I thought, so I'm going to go in. And I knocked on the door, went in, and his secretary, Joan, she said, what can I do for you? I told her who I was, and that she said he never sees anyone these days. She said, but I'll ask anyway. And she went in the office and came out, and she said, here, see you. And I went in the office and sat down, and I was there for about 5 minutes. And he said, I saw your Avengers, and he said, I think you've done very well. I said, I'm surprised you even remember. He said, I remember everything. And that was my last time I saw Hitchcock, and it was a very nice thing. And he knew that I'd worked on his series as well, the one which he franchised in England. Mm-hmm. And I also worked on it in America, the Hitchcock series in America. Yeah, and I shot that in San Francisco and all around over there. It's a good series to work on. Yes, Cleopatra. That was a blast, that picture. I started it in Pinewood Studios. Then we got stormed out and rained out. And it went to Rome, and I went to Rome with it. I was the stunt director on that for the forum sequence. I rehearsed the forum sequence for everybody, and then he came in and shot it. You know, but whilst I was doing this, all the stunt stuff on it, one thing and another, and arranging all the soldiers and the horses, Ray Kellogg, who was the second unit director, had a heart attack, and they had no one there. So I took over second unit director as the stunt director and rehearsed all of that. That was a nightmare thing. I mean, I used to say cut after we rehearsed it. It used to take a week to get everybody back to number one. It was an incredible piece of, I'll never get an experience like that again in my life. You know, Hermes Pan was the choreographer. I think at the beginning of the procession we had something like 300 veiled dancers. Following them was the Sphinx with the slaves pulling it. We had, I think, 1,000 white slaves and 400 black. Some white men blacked up because we couldn't get that many blacks. they wanted zebras, so we had donkeys painted black and white as zebras. And we had like 200 trumpeters around the roof of the courtyard. Well, you used to get the first trumpeter up on a platform about 2 foot by 2 with his trumpet. Trumpets didn't sound, obviously, you put that on afterwards, as you know. But we get the first guy up. By the time we got to number 37, the first guy wanted to come down and pee. So everybody had to stop and while we get the first guy down to pee. And then this guy gets up and that guy's got a headache. It used to be purgatory. And you think everybody's set and you look up and there's 3 guys missing. And at dailies, when we used to go and look at the stuff on the tests, you'd find people with watches and sunglasses on, and it was absolutely a nightmare. And then afterwards you'd say, cut, go to number 1s. Now you go back to the hotel for 3 or 4 days while the assistants, which I had 30 of them, went back to number 1. It was incredible. And also every day someone died. Someone there died. We had about, I think, 6,000 people on that set. And we were getting them from everywhere. And I had an office above of Stuart Lyon's office, and we noticed after about 10 days' work that the other side of a wire fence there was a pathway, but the pathway never went anywhere. It went to the wire fence, and we couldn't quite make it out. And then we investigated and watched, and what used to happen, the extras used to come in the morning, get their bundle of clothes, go through the spray, because they sprayed everybody dark, no makeup, they're like on Spartacus, they sprayed everywhere with a spray gun, get their bundle of clothes, used to go to the wire fence, duck under it, walk right the way across the field and back into Rome. 5 o'clock, they would come back across the field to get their money. So production in the end, what they used to do is tear their chit in half so they could get the money, stop them going home. They were doing it for weeks. And I mean hundreds going out through the fence and going home. It was absolutely ridiculous. And after that, came back to England and just stepped into the right things at the right time. I mean, I did the Avengers, but before I did the Avengers, I got with Tony Richardson and Woodward Films. Did Saturday Night and Sunday Morning, the stunts on it. Then Tony did Loneliness Long Distance Runner, which again, I played the same part as I played in a series called Ghost Squad, which was Mr. Clay. I played the prison officer that beat the kids up in Loneliness Long Distance Runner. And that was a nice part for me. Tony, after that, decided they were going to do Tom Jones, and I became Ramrod on Tom Jones. I trained all the horses, did all the stunts on it, and also played the guy at the end with the patch over his eye who accused him of stealing and got him hung. And then I was hung in his place, because it was me hanging up there. And I broke both my ankles on that. When Albert jumps from his horse onto Susanna's horse and brings it to a standstill, if you get that film and slow it down, you'll see that it's me doing it, but I've got both feet in plaster painted brown with black tops round as boots, because Richardson wanted me to do it, and I did it with 2 broken ankles. Actors were always very good to stuntmen. They would never do their stunt double out of a job. If that sort of thing happened with a lot of actors who really thought they could do it, and a lot of them did it and got hurt badly, they would make sure the stuntman did the full rehearsal and one thing or another, so he always got the money. But once we got our equity call or our Screen Actors Guild call, we were paid whether we did it or not, unless it was a big stunt like a fall, a high fall, and we didn't do the fall, but we always did. I mean, now you get actors who will do some falls because now there are things like airbags. We never had airbags. We used to fall into cardboard boxes, and it used to hurt. I mean, you know, it's time after time you used to get hurt in cardboard boxes, and unforeseen things happen. I did a fall at the Chelsea Cloisters in London once, and I was on the roof, and the Chelsea Cloisters has a well in the centre, and I had a fight up there. The other stuntman was Paddy Ryan, and he has to knock me in the end, and I go over the edge. Well, that was a high fall in those days, because it was 68 feet, I think it was, down into boxes from the top of the building. And it was night, and as I got to the edge ready to do the fall, Paddy hit me, he gave me the punch. I turned round to go, and as I fell, I saw this white mist in front of me. I couldn't make it out what it was. And I knew I was in trouble, so I balled up, tucked up, went down the boxes, then landed on my back. But what had happened, there was an actress who lived there called Lisa Gastoni, and she had come in to her apartment, seen all these lights outside the windows, opened her steel frame window to look up, and luckily the curtain blew out, and that's what I saw. But I broke 2 toes on 1 foot because they hit the iron frame of the window. You know, but a simple job like that, you price it as just a 60-foot fall, and the unexpected happened. You know, she was so upset, but she didn't know. She just came in, saw the lights, opened the window, and luckily that net curtain blew out and I saw it. Otherwise, my face would have been straight through that iron frame window. Silly things like that happen. Yeah, I did I don't know what it was a war film for Danzigers, and we did a thing there where I was in a tank, a German in a tank, and the tank comes into a village, and the resistance come up, open the lid of the tank, throw a hand grenade in, it blows up. I come out on fire, which is not a very difficult stunt to do, but it needed timing, you know, and you could get a bit hot in that tank, as you can imagine. Well, we rehearsed it, and the way we do that sort of thing is, I have a thing on me called stuff called pet jelly, which is very inflammable. And the special effects man puts a battery in my hand with a plunger and a fuse, and it's attached to the costume, and I press it and it ignites the costume, and I'm on fire. Plus which there are smoke charges in there, which is pretty harmless stuff that fills the thing up with smoke. So first of all the smoke comes out, then the flames, and I come flying out. Well, we worked all this out very nicely, everything's okay. The one thing I hadn't worked out, and stupidity, that the armoured car or the tank, when you slam the hatch, it ratchets and closes 9 turns. As you hit it, it goes 9 times, 9 spins, and locks it for safety. So the tank itself, the lid was ajar so that the stuntman who's playing the resistance fighter can get his fingers underneath it and pull the lid up to throw the hand grenade in. So I'm in there, I've got a smoke charge ready to ignite, which was just a pull, you pull it and it smokes. And I've got the battery operator here to blow it and set me on fire. Once I've done that, I push the lid up and I get out. Well, the tank comes in, it comes to a near stop, the stuntman comes up, lifts it, throws the pretending hand grenade in, slams the lid, I let off the smoke charge, I ignite my suit, go to push the lid up, and it won't go. And it's taken me seconds to realise what's gone wrong. I don't know what's gone wrong. And then I realised I've got to turn the handle. And it was the longest 9 turns of my life. And I managed to get out of there, and they knew something had gone wrong because it was too long. And when I came out, they got the shot, but I got burnt quite badly. I was in hospital for about 5 days with burns on my backs and my arms. Because, you know, it takes a long time to turn that handle. That was a very near one I had, very near. They're very difficult stunts, those. Richard Harris, Pat McGowan, Richard Widmark, Gene Barry, Cary Grant, Robert Wagner. There's so many. Stu Granger. Also Victor Mature, but then again everybody doubled Victor Mature. You know, he would want to double if he had to step up the curb, you know, or the sidewalk. Everybody, Zara Khan, everybody. I think if you examine the picture of Zara Khan, whenever he's riding, you'll see the height of the rider changes all the way through the picture. Sometimes it was someone tall, someone big, someone small. Whoever was the closest was to grab him, double Vic, because Vic won't do it. Vic won't do it. You know, I mean, all those sort of things. And there's Patrick McGowan. Patrick McGowan would do his own stunts if he got the chance, but not many of the stuntmen wanted to work with Patrick McGowan, I tell you, because he was unpredictable. Patrick would get involved in a fight and he'd start raving crazy, you know. And when they went on to the Prisoner, and it changed to The Prisoner, I think it was Charlie Crichton doing the show, I'm not sure which, they actually attempted a show without a script. And that particular episode starts with him, I think, sitting in a barber's chair having shaving cream around his face. And Patrick, at that stage, was producing it and directing every so often. And they said to him, "Where's the script?" And he said, "Well, we're not going to have a script on this one. We're just going to make it up as we go along." And everybody was saying, "Wait a minute, you can't make up a script here. Like, what do we know? We don't know what clothes you want. We don't know what the scene's supposed to be about. We don't know if you need a cup and a saw or a knife." But he was determined to try it, but I don't think it worked. And I think Lou Gray stepped in the end and said, "Come on, let's get a script and let's carry on. But it got silly. It got very silly, the whole thing. But that was Patrick. He was a very unpredictable fellow. He had a series in America, and I think he shot about 3 episodes, then he didn't come anymore because he didn't like it. And he didn't want to do anymore. And with the Avengers, I brought in Kung Fu to England. I was the first person ever to not know the actual art of Kung Fu, but to know about it as using it as a television series. And I went to Brian Clements and Albert Fennell and said, because we were talking about what Diana was going to do when she came in the show, because I did the test with Diana as a stuntman. I did a test with all the girls that came. I was black and blue, because every one of them had to do a fight sequence for the test. And at that stage, I was still the stuntman, so I had to do a fight with every girl they wanted tested. And I mean, I can't tell you. I used to say, right, you hit me on the face here, then you kick me in the knee. What they do on the take, they belt me on the face there, hit me over the head, then punch me. I mean, they never stuck to the routine once. Yeah. I was black and blue. But we then, all those shows and all those things down there, and Diana wanted a fight and she didn't want to do anything. We were in a heck of a mess. So I went to Albert and Brian. I said, have you ever heard of Ping Yong Kun Sut and Kung Fu? No, they hadn't heard it. So I said, okay. So I got a friend of mine who I trained under, Cliff Gibbs from Dunstable. And he came to the studio and we put on an exhibition of Kung Fu. And they said, it's marvelous. We love it. Diana loved it. And I'd already been working with Patrick using panache for a long time. And so we started Kung Fu. But if only I had had the sense to do what they did in Kung Fu and shoot it at high speed. I mean, because that's what they did and it was a great success. If I'd have had Diana, it would have been phenomenal to see her doing all those moves in slow motion. It would have been really good. From the stunt director on the Avengers, Brian Clements and Albert Fennell gave me the big break of letting me direct second unit, which I think it was called The Bird Who Knew Too Much. I directed Diana doing a high dive off of a board, diving board, a swimming board. Production manager on that, which was Ron Fry, said to me, you know there's going to be a big change in pay. And I wasn't sure what second unit directors got. He said, you'll probably be on £40 a day. Really? Yes, are the days you're working. And the second unit was only maybe 3 days a week, if that. So I had to make that choice. But I wanted it so bad, then at that time, the young lady that I was married to, I discussed it with her, and she said, well, I think you should do it. And I got ready to do it. Now I handed over then to my second in command, another stuntman, Joey Dunn. He suddenly is going up to 100 and something pounds a week, and I've dropped down to, 40 to 60 pounds. But I did it, and I went for it. Then I had to make the choice, and I chose to stay with the second unit directing. Now, once I went it across to Rob Baker and Roger and got a Saint, then I was back in reasonable money again. But that first few weeks was very hard, and there was times there when I thought, well, maybe I should take a stunt call, because people were still calling me, you see. Even though I was a second unit director, I was getting calls from production companies saying, would I do this stunt, would I do that, or would I organise that fight, or do this fight sequence. But I stuck it out. It was tough, but I stuck it out, and I came across with it. Best thing I ever did in my life. And I went to Bob Baker and told him I was doing it. He said, you want to direct some second unit for the Saint? And I said, I'd really, really like to direct a whole Saint. And he looked at me and smiled, and he said, well, I hear from Albert, Brian, that your stuff was good. He said, let me talk to Roger. So he went and spoke to Roger, and Roger said, yeah, go for it. And it's a very nervous day. Brendan Fraser, I think it was the cameraman, who wasn't too happy with it because he really wanted to direct. But Roger, I couldn't have been happy. I mean, mind you, I knew Roger very well. I'd fought him so many times in different Saints because I'd already been on the Saint as an actor or a stunt actor, as we called it in those days. Because we always used, us stunt people, any of us that could play a line, always looked to get a part with dialogue. And we always had the dream of getting a part with dialogue and reading the script and there was no fight. That would have been the lovely thing, you know, that someone wanted us because we could act. So we used to turn over the pages, you know, there's a line there, a line there. Damn, I get hit over the head there, I get thrown over the cliff here, or I get smashed up here. It never very happened that you got a part where you didn't have to fight. I mean, I was smacked around so many times by Roger Moore, I can't tell you. I mean, nice parts, but I knew at the end I was going to get hell, and I used to get it. I got squirted with hoses, I got thrown over sofas. I broke so much furniture with Roger Moore, it's not true. And then I got a chance to direct him and stand back and have other people do the fights instead of me. But he was as good as gold. He never queried one moment of my direction, ever. I mean, whatever I asked him to do, he did it. If I said enter there instead of there, didn't bat an eye. He'd do it exactly. I mean, he was absolutely marvellous. And I was as nervous as hell for the first 2 days. And it was a 10-day shoot. But I did it. Everything worked fine. And Brian and Albert then saw that episode and said, hey, would you like to direct an Avengers? So then I went to the Avengers directing, and then Monty Berman found out about me, rediscovered me. And I was doing Jason King. I can't remember which order they were in those days. It's a long time back. There was Jason King. There was Jason King. So, and across the road, I used to go across there and do Sergeant Cork and those things there. But obviously the Champions. Yeah, I did the Champions. I directed the Champions. Stuart Damon, William Gaunt, and Alexander Bastido. The Champions. Department S, that was it. Jason King, Department S, the Champions, Randall and Hopkirk. Did a lot of Randall and Hopkirk. Loved that show. That was a lot of fun. Kenny Cope and Michael Pratt. That was a good fun, that show. And I knew I wanted to write as well. So Dennis Spooner was a script editor and Brian was writing the show. And I wrote That's How Murder Snowballs, which was the first screenplay I ever wrote. And Dennis liked it and Monty Berman liked it. So now I was directing and writing screenplays. And then I used to nip up to MGM up the road and do Hitchcock. Then Paul Knight found me, and I went off and did Black Beauty. And I got the Montrose Festival thing for one of my Black Beauties there. I did Black Beauty. Then I wanted to make a film of my own, and I did a documentary called Perfume Garden in 1970. And I won Outstanding Director of the Year from the London Film Festival from John Trevelyan. And then I just used to go everywhere. I was so lucky. I got show after show. They just kept coming my way. The New Avengers, the New Avengers, you see, you said that you had the team of the old Avengers. So the only thing that was wrong, if anything can be classed as wrong with the New Avengers, is you brought in a third person. You brought in Gareth, who's a good actor, a nice guy, and always on time, knows his words, but you fitted him in a slot which wasn't his, it was Patrick's. So everybody was judging him. Everybody judged him. And it's the same with all those shows. When you put someone else in, I mean, Linda Thorson. I think Linda Thorsen's a good actress, and I think she did a brilliant job. But she's fighting Diana Rigg's image. You know, you bring her in and you say, now it's the Avengers and you're Tara King. And forget Emma Peel. They're not going to forget Emma Peel. So this girl has got to fight this. Same with Ian Ogilvy when he took over from Roger and the Saint. They've all got this problem, you know. Target was a lot of fun. It was a great show to direct that. I mean, it really was. We all had fun every day on that. And Johanna and Gareth I mean, they did incredible things. They were actually up on those roofs themselves. And we were up high there, those roofs. Those roofs were about 40 feet above the ground. And that's our lead actress and our lead actor up there actually doing it. And I had Johanna walking along parapets, you know, and as an ex-stuntman, I knew what was going on through her head. And I'm directing this. But it was such a great show. I mean, it really was. And it's become sort of an occult episode, that. And Patrick with his makeup on and that. I mean, it was really good fun. And it was exciting, really exciting. And that was the one that started me off in America. I went over with Brian Kemmons for a meeting. He had the meeting there, and he took targets with him to show Quinn Martin. And Quinn Martin saw it and said, this is a great show, he loved this. He said, who directed this? And he said, the guy who was down the road waiting for me, Ray Austin, he's down there. So he asked me to come up and met me and told me how much I liked the show. And a few weeks later, an agent called Ronnie Leaf called me with 8 hours of television, starting with a Hawaii 5-0, going out to straight from here. I was going to do, I had already shot the pilot of The Saint with Ian Ogilvy, the remake of The Saint, and I was in the middle of getting ready for another show when they offered me this 6 hours or 8 hours in Los Angeles. First I went to Brian and Albert Fennell and said, hey, what do I do? You know, I'm prepping Bob Baker's show. And Brian said, go and see Bob. So I went to Bob Baker. I said, listen, they've offered me a contract in America to direct all this stuff. He said, go. He said, don't be crazy. He said, I can get someone else here to finish the show. He said, go. And I got on an airplane and went and never looked back. I went from Hawaii back to Los Angeles to shoot a pilot called The Sword of Justice. Then I did The Hardy Boys straight after that. Then on to Love Boat. And then back on A Man Called Sloan. And then back out to Hawaii for another Hawaii 5-0. And from then on, I was on a roll. I was enjoying myself too much. I was doing the thing I always wanted to do, to be behind a camera and direct. And I was just, it was a dream. I mean, a dream that came true, and I would work day, night, whatever. The only thing I found hard and was difficult was meeting their schedule when I first went over there, because, you know, over here, our Avengers and our Saints were taking us 10 days to shoot, and a hard 10 days. You know, we used to have to shoot 4 pages, 5 pages a day, and it was hard. And when I went out there, someone said, you've got 7 days to shoot this. Oh boy, hello. It was very difficult, very difficult. That pilot of Magnum was shot in 3 different episodes, sort of thing. I mean, someone started it, someone else went in, and I went in and wrapped the whole thing up for them. And then when they saw what I'd done with that, they immediately wrote, I think it was Don Bellisario wrote them, was 2 movies of the week. The second one was called Did You See the Sunrise, which was the one which was talked about because Magnum at the end shoots the unarmed guy through the head at the end of the series. And we freeze the frame, you know, with the smoke coming out the gun, where he killed the Russian. And and the first one, the first 2 hours was Memories Forever, is the one where he found his wife. And they were quite big, they were mini features. I mean, they really were mini features. They were received very well. And then after that, I shot so many episodes of Magnum, so many episodes. Deep Channel, I taught Tom Selleck to dive underwater, to do the underwater stuff on Deep Channel, all those. And then years after, I went back there. I went back many times and shot different things, but I went back and shot the pilot of The Tales of the Gold Monkey, which was a great series with Stephen Collins, again a Don Bellisario show. And we shot that there and at Universal, but all the location stuff, all the water stuff, all the boat stuff, everything was shot there. And that was a lot of fun doing that, a lot of fun doing that. I used to do, long before that, I had a Hawaii 5-0, which was my first introduction to the island. And that was a lot of fun with Jack Lord. Good shows, good shows. Jack, he was a bit of a handful, but he was a nice man, and the show went very well. As we know, I think it was 16 years. Terrific show. And then back down to Los Angeles and all the different shows. Spencer for Hire. I had a good time doing Spencer for Hire. Very good time, but the worst winters I've ever had, because they shoot that in Boston. And I've never known anywhere so cold as Boston in the winter. We'd go out, you couldn't recognise us when we went out to direct. We just had faces poking out of coats. And then it was a terrible show to shoot weather-wise. Highlander, I did a lot of Highlanders in Paris and in Vancouver. And also in Vancouver I shot the series of Police Academy over there, which was a lot of fun to do that as well. Good shows. I got pigeonholed long ago as an action director, which used to upset me sometimes because there were some nice dramatic shows I would have liked to have done. But I have directed shows without a fight sequence in. I got stuck with Wilfred Brimley. I love being with him. Wilfred Brimley for 2 years on a show called Our House, which was the story of him as a grandfather who'd lost his son, but his daughter-in-law and the children come to live with him. And we shot it all at Lorimar in Los Angeles. But it was a good show. There was no violence in it at all. They were good family shows. And I used to like Black Beauty, because Black Beauty wasn't that much violence. You know, we had the odd highwayman and a little fight sequence. But they were nice shows. I used to like to get away from the action if I could. I mean, I really did. I still ask the director, and I go and do things if I really want to do them. Yeah. But I've always wanted to write novels. I've always wanted to be a novelist. And my wife, Wendy, she started, first of all, whilst I was away shooting Zorro. She was in the hotel, so she wrote a novel. And I said, I'd really like to write a novel. So she said, well, why don't you? And it was the most difficult thing I ever did, the transition, because I wrote the first novel. It was too short, and Wendy read it. She was the first one to read it. And she said to me, I don't know where you are. She said, I don't know what that person looks like. I don't know what room you're in. She said, you're writing it like a script. Well, with a script, I have an art director and a cameraman to go around with me, and the art director says, okay, we'll have this room read, and we'll have you sitting here, and we'll have 4 women walk in or whatever. And I just wrote the dialogue and put it and directed it. But when I'm starting to write my book, I'm saying, you know, he came into the room and so, and she's saying to me, but what's the room look like? I mean, how many people there? What time of day it is? So I went back and did it again, and she accused me of the same thing again, and she was right, in actual fact. And eventually I got the hang of it, and the book turned out 300 pages in the end instead of 109. It was absolutely ridiculous when I went back and looked at the first draft. And I put it up to a literary agent, because I didn't want to give it to my theatrical agent. And they took it straight away. I was very lucky. And the second one, I chose the wrong title on the second one, because I called it Dead Again. And Kenneth Brennan already made the picture, but it was too late for me to change it. At least now I've discovered Amazon.com, and you can go in there and find out what titles are which, because you just type in your title, and if it comes up a book, you say, forget it, I'm going to get another title. But Dead Again was received very well. I had good write-ups and good press on it. And it took place in Cornwall. I brought Wilfred Brack here for it. And he was as good as gold. And I started writing that book, and I called Wilfred and said, look, I'm writing a story about a retired Charlottesville homicide cop. And I really like to put him like you know, because I've worked with Wilfred for 2 years, and he can be a cantankerous devil, Wilfred. So he said, do it. So after I got through about 5 or 6 chapters, I called him up. I said, look, Wilfred, I said, this is more like you than it's like you. You know, I said, it's a bit much. So he says, hey, we're family. He says, do it. I couldn't care less. So I did it, sent him the book afterwards. He said, I think it's great. He said, anything you want, you got it. I said, well, as you know in the story, he looks like you. And I've said he looks like you, and my character hates it. He looks like Wilfred Brimley. So he said, what do you want? I said, well, I'd love to be able to use a picture of you on the cover, back of head or something like that. He said, you don't have to use back of head. He said, use what you want. So on the cover of both my books is Wilfred Brimley, but as Buford Sloane. The second book has got his PI license, and it's Wilfred's photo on there. And he's been so nice about it, so nice. No, I've never directed anything I've written. Well, I have, but pages, you know, on rewrites. I mean, so many times I've been doing shows and I've got to rewrite scenes and that. In that way, yes, but not actually the whole script. No, I've never done that. But I've just finished the screenplay because I've got another book. I wanted to get away from Buford Sloane, my American detective, for a while, so I've written a book for England called Find Me a Spy, Catch Me a Traitor, which I've also finished a screenplay on, and I'm hoping to get that way here later in the year, and if so, that will be the first time I've directed one of my own subjects. I'm looking forward to that, if I can pull it off. The third book comes out next month of the Wilfred Brimley series. The first one was Eagle Heist, the second one was Dead Again, and the next one that comes out is From Out of the Shadows. So I've done the whole spectrum, from getting knocked about by Roger Moore, writing my own novels. And I live in the country now, which is very nice. I can sit there and do it, or I go down and do JAG every so often. It's a good life. It's a good life.